Here we go in three, two, one.
Folks, what is up? Welcome back to the Vol Talk podcast. You're here with myself, Blake, and that is my brother, Austin, and we are here to talk about all things volunteer sports. And Austin, what a jam-packed weekend it was. Unfortunately, we didn't come out on top on the SC tournament in men's basketball. However, we had a great showing, and we do have the seeding. And so we're going to be talking about the seeding for the NCAA tournament. And we're also going to be talking about the huge sweep this weekend for the Tennessee baseball volunteers against Florida. And man, what an awesome series that was.
Yeah, I mean, it was a solid weekend of all sports. Unfortunate to lose in the SEC championship. Also, I don't know if you remember talking about on the SEC championship or tournament preview. I was like, you know what the worst case scenario would be for this is
Right.
you go through the tournament, you play all these tough games, you have a super physical game with Auburn, and then you play a physical game with Florida, and you don't come out on top, so you're gonna get the 2 seed no matter what, and you just add mileage to the tank. So it's like, yeah, it's. I mean, again, unfortunate, but I mean, we were texting before the game, and you're saying how it's possible even if we beat Florida, we'd still end up a 2 seed. So that would have been kind of surprising to me, but yeah, it was like you said, overall good showing in the tournament. Got one back on Auburn. And also, I had to bring this up as well. I don't know if you remember after Auburn guaranteed the regular season championship, SEC championship, because we beat Alabama. Some of the Auburn players were singing Rocky Top. Well, that clip resurfaced after we beat them
Yes,
in
sir,
the
it did.
SEC
I'm sure
tournament.
it did.
So that was that kind of came back to bite them. But yeah, I mean, good tournament. It was fun. Wish we could have won it, but yeah, now we head into the big dance, man.
Yeah, it was a hard fought game against Florida, and unfortunately, we didn't come out on top, like you said. It just added mileage to the team right before we head into the big dance. But, we got some reps in, and we got to, face honestly, a Florida team that all of a sudden is looking like, potentially the
Best team in
the
the
best in
country.
the country outside
Yeah.
of maybe Duke. I mean, they absolutely dominated Alabama in the semifinals for the tournament, and so Florida's looking like a really tough team. We played them hard, and so overall, I'm fairly optimistic going into the big dance in terms of our performance. We're going to get into our seeding for the big dance, like you said. We're going to get into the review of the SEC tournament, and we're going to review the baseball Vols and their sweep against the Florida Gators this weekend. So a lot coming up, folks. Go ahead and buckle in for this episode. Give us a like, drop us a comment if you would. We really appreciate it. We're still, as you all can see, a growing channel, so we really appreciate your early support as we get the Vol Talk podcast off the ground. But Austin, let's jump right into the SEC tournament and just kind of an overall kind of review of the Vols in the SEC tournament. We had our first game against Texas, won that, and we then went on to play Auburn. And as you said, we got a big, huge win against Auburn, and that was really great. I thought, for the longest time, Auburn was the undisputed best team in the country, until recently, where they've dropped off. And so I thought, that was pretty big for us to get a nice win there, and then again a hard-fought loss against Florida. And so, what are your overall thoughts on the performance in the SEC tournament?
Yeah, I mean, the Texas game went really well. Probably our most complete performance against Texas. Although we did want to, for some reason, this team loves keeping games closer than they should be, but they end up pulling away against Texas, so that was one we didn't have to really sweat out. Chaz really showed up in that game in a big way. And then against Auburn, dude, that was just another tough physical SEC matchup with Auburn. I mean, it wasn't as physical as the first matchup, but kind of again we kind of got wrecked in the paint. I mean, Broom kind of got what he wanted, but we were able to do enough, especially because Zakai, dude. I mean, Zakai was huge throughout the tournament and has been huge for really the second half of the season offensively, and of course what everything else he does. But I mean, he's just been a scoring presence of recent, which we're gonna need big time in the tournament, especially if Chaz, he kind of fell off against Auburn. Then he also didn't really show up against Florida, and we kind of saw the impact of that, right? Because Florida had they have a lot of good guards, and we just couldn't keep up. And right every time we made it close against Florida, they just pulled away, and we were never really able to come back. Have to shout out Gainey though from the Florida game. He was fantastic today. Absolutely incredible. He was the only reason we were even still in the game at some point. So yeah,
I think he finished with 19 points maybe, or I don't remember his final stat line, but
he finished with 24.
24.
And Zakai had 23. But yeah, I mean they were both really really good, and yeah, it's again this team can be anyone on any given game day or lose. Like that's just kind of how it is, man. That's how this team has been all year. Hope we don't have to match up with Florida again, dude. I really just that's one team I definitely didn't want to see. Really glad we're not in their bracket. Could have very easily ended up in their bracket too. So really happy to avoid them. That's not a team I want to see again. Because like you said, I mean they've been arguably the best team in the country in the second half of the season. So yeah, but I didn't even expect to get to where we were. I really didn't expect to beat Auburn. Again, nice to get one back on them, but yeah, I mean, we talked about this before the tournament. We want to save the juice for the big dance. So if we're gonna go on a huge run, like a 5-game run, I want it to be in the big dance. And this tournament, like, I mean, this is insanely hard. We play Texas, who is now in the big dance. Then we play Auburn, who's a 1 seed, and then we play Florida, who's a 1 seed. I mean, there's no harder 3-game stretch unless you're talking about like the Elite Eight through the national championship. Like that's what that's comparable to. So yeah, I mean, so that's nice. We won't play that tough a competition in the tournament until the Final Four. So.
Yeah, and that's a great point you bring up. The fact that we played back-to-back games against number 1 seeds. The only time that could potentially happen again is going from the Final Four into the national championship to play back-to-back 1 seeds again. And so that, and then like you said, the overall stretch of competition, probably won't start until, like you said, the Elite Eight. And so I do think that is something to take away from the SEC tournament. That, look, like you said, this team is kind of back and forth in terms of these close games and dropping some games that we shouldn't and things like that. But overall, we can play with anyone in the country. And we're going to get into talking about our bracket and our seeding here in a second. But overall, a good performance from the SEC tournament, in my opinion. We would have liked to have won it, obviously, especially like you said on the last episode, where it's like, hey, if we're going to get to the championship, man, let's win it, instead of just adding all that mileage. And so that unfortunate situation happened, but it was a good showing. I do want to talk real briefly about the Auburn game and just call out Zakai, or shout out Zakai, I should say. You mentioned Broom, and yeah, Broom obviously had a big game against us because, I mean, this guy's 6'10", how many ever pounds, he's huge. And we just don't have a big that matches up with him. But, man, one of my favorite moments, it might end up being one of my favorite moments of Vol basketball history, where it was pretty late in the second half in the Auburn game. You and I were watching it together. And Broom found himself defending Zakai. Broom is 6'10", how many ever pounds, 200-something pounds. Zakai is 5'9". So this guy is over a foot taller than Zakai. And you see Broom, and he's just yapping. He's yapping away, just talking smack to Zakai. And then Zakai just drives past him and scores on him. Just, yeah. I freaking love Zakai Ziegler, man. I mean, just what a freaking baller to just stare that right in the face while this guy's just yapping at you. And you just go and get a bucket on him.
Yeah,
it was a really cool moment.
It was a cool moment, and he's been dealing with that his whole life. He's always been the most undersized guy in the gym, and and he doesn't back away from a challenge, dude. So that was really cool to see him do that to him. kind of weird to be talking smack to a 5'9" point guard, dude. Like, why don't you pick on somebody your own size? I mean, you're giving Akpar enough work as it is, man. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, I do respect Broom for at least trying to guard a guard. I mean, that's pretty tough to do for a big man. But I mean, yeah, Zakai did put a move on him and scored, and yeah, I mean. Having Zakai Ziegler on this team, that's why we are where we are, period. He has been the most consistent player on this team and is the reason we're in the position we're in. I mean, obviously we all wanted a 1 seed, but I mean we're also about to talk about the bracket. I think the bracket we drew might be better than being a 1 seed, because the last thing I want to do is get all those, which again we'll get into it in a minute, or I guess we can get into it now. I don't want to draw like an Alabama or a Florida again, or even Auburn. Like, I don't want to play those teams. I'm tired. I'm sick and tired playing those damn teams. I want some new blood, some non-SEC blood, and now we get Houston as our 1 seed. So, so there is a silver lining to not getting that 1 seed out of the SEC tournament. I think we probably got the weakest 1 seed. I think that's pretty fair to say at this moment in time. If you're just looking at how these teams are playing right now, I think all of us would rather play Houston than Florida or Auburn or Duke. So yeah, I mean that's at least nice that we don't get the 1 seed that we wanted, but we have a pretty solid bracket in my opinion.
Yeah, so let's use that to segue right into the seeding. So let's talk about where we landed in the bracket. We're recording this on Sunday night. This episode is going to drop tomorrow on Monday, so y'all will have seen the news about the seeding, but we're going to go over kind of where we landed. So as Austin has alluded to, we did land in a bracket with the number 1 seed Houston, and we landed a 2 seed, and our first matchup will be against 15 seed Wofford. Wofford has always been a scrappy team, and so there was a couple different predictions that Austin made in particular about our seeding in the big dance in previous episodes that we'll talk about. We did one of those being drawing Kentucky in our bracket, and sure enough, out of every team we could have drawn in our bracket, we did draw Kentucky, and they had our number this year. But you were making a good point before we started recording off air about, hey, it's tough to beat a team 3 times in a season from their perspective. So that may not be as big of a challenge as we are thinking it might be. But here's some more highlights from our bracket. We've got Kentucky at the 3 seed. And then we've got Houston as the 1 seed, and then it looks like, let's see here, Clemson at 5, Purdue at 4. We potentially got if Purdue pulls off an upset, which I doubt they will, but we've got Purdue in our bracket again, just like last year. So a pretty decently strong bracket, but the fact of the matter is like you said, we don't have Duke, who could potentially be the best team in the country. So Duke obviously got a 1 seed. Their 2 seed is Alabama. And then coming over here to the other brackets, of course, Auburn with the 1 seed. And then their 2 seed was Michigan State. And then Florida with the final 1 seed. They obviously had a dominant showing in the SEC tournament, earned that last 1 seed. And then their 2 seed is St. John's. And so, overall, in my opinion, it's not a terrible path. In fact, it's a fairly decent path. Like you said, we were hoping for some new blood. And also, we had a great showing against out-of-conference opponents this year. In fact, we were undefeated out of conference. All of our losses came in conference. And so, all in all, it's not a terrible seeding.
Yeah, I think it could have been worse. I think it really could have been worse, although it is kind of unfortunate about the Kentucky. The Kentucky draw is probably the most unfortunate thing, because we had 2 shots at Kentucky this year and lost both, and they're pretty decisive in basketball terms, pretty decisive losses. So it is really unfortunate to draw Kentucky in our bracket. And yeah, I did predict that a couple episodes ago, because I just assumed the worst thing's going to happen as a Vol fan. But like I said, it's kind of made up for the Houston draw. Like, if there's any 1 seed I want right now, I think it's Houston. And maybe that's final last words, but yeah, I mean, I'm hoping Kentucky has had a tendency recently to get upset by a team they shouldn't get upset by. Now they have a new coach now, so maybe that changes. But I'm really hoping Kentucky somehow gets upset before we have to see them in this tournament. But we're maybe
funny enough. Well, real quick, I was going to say, funny enough, they could potentially get upset by a team we beat, or a non-conference opponent we beat early on in the season in Illinois at the 6th seed.
Yeah.
Kentucky will play, if Kentucky wins their first game against Troy, they'll play, assuming Illinois beats the play-in team, then they could potentially drop to. That would be nice. Like you said, if they have an early exit before we even play them, that would be nice.
Yeah, it would. That would be really nice if they could just get beat before we even have to face them. But yeah, I mean, really, what we want is a Final Four. So I think if we get a chance to play Houston, I like our chances in that game, especially compared to the alternative. But if there is one game I think that we lose, that we have a really good chance of losing before that, it would be that Kentucky rematch, because for some reason Kentucky has had our number this year, for whatever reason, even though it is tough to beat the same team 3 times. So yeah, all in all, I think it was pretty average with what we could have got. Like, had we gotten like a different 3 seed, I think we would be really happy about the draw. But since we got Kentucky, it kind of balances the Houston draw out. So
yeah, exactly. It kind of balances out that draw, like you said. But overall, drawing Houston is the best 1 seed. Like, I think we both agree that Houston's the best 1 seed that we could have drawn. And so outside of that Kentucky game, not a bad bracket overall. In the second round, assuming that we beat Wofford in the round of 64, in the round of 32, it looks like we'd be playing either Utah State or UCLA. Obviously, UCLA is a storied program, but so they could be a tough 7 seed, in that round of 32. But ultimately, I think that we'll be able to go on and win that. And then assuming Kentucky takes care of business, then we meet them in the Sweet 16 for a potential matchup against, for all intents and purposes, we're going to assume Houston. Houston has a pretty decently easy path to the Elite 8. They've got a no-name 16 seed. Gonzaga could be a difficult game if Gonzaga wins that 8-9 matchup against Georgia.
yeah, that's
Honestly, Georgia's a tough team too. So really, Houston has a decently difficult round of 32, but Clemson, Purdue from there. I think if we do win out, then we're, for all intents, unless something crazy happens. It is March Madness, but it's looking like we would meet Houston in Elite 8. And dude, if we can get there, if we can get past Kentucky, and we can get to Houston in the Elite 8, like you said, this is potentially the best 1 seed we could have drawn. And so that Final Four appearance, it's in the cards. I truly think it's in the cards.
I think so. It's so hard to say because of this, how this team has looked up and down, and you just never know. And I am worried about that Kentucky rematch, that third fight with Kentucky. But do you have final prediction? Do you want to make predictions real quick for where we'll end up
in the tournament?
Yeah, in the tournament. Not non-biased predictions, not non-vol talk. Like, we had non-biased. Where do we think we're going? Legitimately.
Legitimately, I like our chances to get the Elite Four, or to the Final Four. I do.
Final Four, huh? I don't know, man. I hate to be pessimistic, but I think Kentucky is just like, it's one of those weird things. It's like matchups make fights, man. In boxing, it's like sometimes matchups make fights, and it's a bad matchup with Kentucky for some reason. I'll be sick if we lose to Kentucky, by the way. Absolutely sick to my stomach if we lose to Kentucky.
I don't even want to think about it right now.
Well, we're making predictions. We have to be honest.
So you think we're gonna drop in the round of 32 not round of 32, the Sweet 16 to Kentucky?
No.
Are you gonna put that prediction right here on Ball Talk?
I mean, dude, I'm just trying to be honest, like, where I think we're going. I mean, Yeah, that's gonna be my prediction. I'll balance out your
Oh,
prediction with kind of, I think realistically we could. I think I'll put it like this. How about I say this? Our floor is Sweet 16. Our ceiling is probably Final Four. I think that's our ceiling. And because I don't see us winning. I don't see us winning at all. I'll be honest, right here on Ball Talk. I don't think this team has what it takes. Like Chaz looked like he was going to show more consistency, and then he just, but then he'll have a game where he scores 11 points, and without his offensive production, man, I don't think we can beat the best teams. But yeah, to balance out your Final Four prediction, which would be the first ever in our program's history, by the way, first Final Four
correct.
of all time in Tennessee history, I'll say worst case scenario, my prediction is losing to Kentucky in the
Oh my
Sweet
gosh.
16, which makes me sick to my stomach thinking about that.
I literally taste a little bile in my mouth already, just from thinking about that. Look, here's the deal. Realistically, you're absolutely right that that is a distinct possibility. Is around Sweet 16 exit. I mean, it's March Madness. Anything is a possibility, right? Anything is. In fact, we have now seen in March Madness history a 16 seed beat a 1 seed, right? And so we've seen it all. It is all possible at this point. So anything's possible, and losing in the Sweet 16 to Kentucky is certainly possible, and it would definitely would. So that would put a real bad taste in everyone's mouths for sure for the end of this basketball season. But I'll say I have to disagree that the ceiling is a Final Four appearance. I think the fact that we've beat Auburn now on a neutral court, and yes, we lost to Florida, but we've also beaten them this year. And yes, it was at home, but we beat them decisively. And our other loss to this neutral court game against Florida in the SEC championship seems like more of a it was a matchup that made more sense versus when we lost to them by 30 at in Gainesville. It was a historically bad shooting night for us, right? We talked about that, and then when they lost us, they had a historic bad shooting day, right? And they lost by 20, and so that was just kind of a weird situation. And yes, we did lose by 9 to them in the SEC championship on a neutral court, but we played tough. We beat Auburn, who was looking like one of the best teams in the country, or is still one of the best teams in the country. And so if I think if we beat Houston and make it to the Final Four, I don't see any reason why we can't knock out. So if we did, let's talk about this. If we did make it to the Final Four, assuming Duke takes care of business,
Play
we would
Duke.
face Duke, and
Yeah.
and that
Yeah, dog. I'm telling you right
and
now. I'm telling you right now. If you thought Broom was bad against Auburn, or it gave us the business when we played Auburn, dude, Cooper Flag might score 50. I'm telling you, man. Akpar is gonna have nothing for Cooper. I'm not trying to disrespect Akpar. I'm not trying to disrespect the squad, man. But if we have to play Cooper Flag and Duke, I'm telling you, it could be rough.
it's see, here's the deal. If we have a bad game, yes, it could be rough. But the thing is if the team shows up, we've shown that we can play with the best teams in the country. I mean, we just talked about how we played back-to-back 1 seeds, and so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we could make it to the national championship. I do. Duke would be a tough matchup in the
That's
Final Four,
crazy, dude.
no, no
National
doubt. But I think we could make it.
championship.
I think that
Whew.
would be the ceiling.
I
I don't see any
just
reason why we couldn't win it all. Now here's the deal. Again, like we've talked about, if Lanier doesn't show up and is inconsistent, then this is everything we've been saying, right? If Lanier's inconsistent, then we will probably lose in the
well,
Sweet 16 to Kentucky.
then point to a 6 game stretch where he's been consistent through the season.
Honestly, he was pretty consistent up until like
You
all the way through
you
the SC
you
tournament,
you cannot find a 6 game stretch where Chaz Lanier has showed up every game. It does not exist.
dude. It
And
might happen.
my boy Igor Milicic is a no show. First of all, I think Rick Barnes hates Igor Milicic. Let me just get that out of the way. Like basically how much he loves the Kai Ziegler, it's the exact opposite. That's how he feels about Igor. It's the exact opposite of how much he hates Igor Milicic, dude. He finds any excuse to bench Igor Milicic. but I mean, at the end of the day, some of that's been justified. But like, yeah, man, I don't know, man. It's not sitting well with me right now. The team's not sitting well with me. I didn't expect to beat Florida today. It's not even that. It's not even like that. I'm so bummed about not beating Florida that I'm down on this team. But I can't think of a 6-game stretch throughout the year where we've been a dominant team and have been able to win game after game after game. All it takes is one, dude. All it takes is one day where Chaz shoots,
Right.
five for 23, and and we get bounced in the round of 32. You know what I'm saying? So my prediction is gunned at my head. Kentucky loss, Sweet 16.
Here's the deal. Unfortunately, here's the unfortunate thing, is you've been somewhat of a Nostradamus on this podcast. Okay,
Uh,
the predictions you've made have been pretty good. I mean, I think the only thing that you weren't able to accurately predict was for football season, the secondary's performance this past
oh
year.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's probably about
sure.
the only. But even then, we said it. They could end up being good because we just didn't know. So that was kind of like a not even really a prediction. We just said we didn't really know. It was a question mark. So you've nailed some pretty insane predictions on this podcast. You bought Igor Milicic stock, and then he had, as we talked about in an episode in the past, go check out that episode. We talked about how he had the best game in the century in any basketball, NBA included.
Actually, just stay on this episode. Don't go watch a
Well, yeah,
irrelevant,
don't click away right
2 month
now,
old episode.
but hey, we'll take views anywhere we can get them. But my point is your predictions have been pretty good so far in this podcast, unfortunately. And so now the fact that you've predicted this, it's going to be real
Hey,
unfortunate when a couple weeks from now we're reviewing the Kentucky loss. That's going to suck.
you want a great segue? I have another prediction, and this one's positive. I've got my Omaha shirt on for a
Okay,
reason.
all right.
We
So
have
okay, so we're moving on from basketball. We're gonna move right into
we
the
have
baseball.
some good news. If you're a fan of all Vol sports, I have some good news. Your Tennessee Vols this year will be back in Omaha, guaranteed. Right here on the podcast after the first SEC series, I will guarantee we will be back in Omaha this year.
I do like this prediction much much better, and so we will quickly segue away from the Sweet 16 exit prediction, and we will segue right into baseball again. And I do like that prediction, and honestly, I am absolutely on board after this showing against Florida this weekend. As you all have probably seen by now, we did sweep Florida this weekend. Absolute dominant performance, really. I mean, honestly, we talked a little bit off air about, you know, the Sunday game was starting to look like our prediction was going to come true in terms of the game. Our pitching depth didn't seem to be there. They got up on us 4-1, and and I believe it was 4-2 going into the eighth, if I'm not mistaken. And so it looked like our prediction was coming true. But then boom, we just started swinging, and we came back, and we got the Sunday win, and we freaking run ruled them on Saturday. We were watching that game. We were shocked because we were like, we didn't even realize the run rule was on for SEC play. And so just an absolute dominant performance by this baseball team. And so I think there's no reason not to expect this team to be back in Omaha.
Yeah, it's very possible. I'm not sure if we were down 4-2 in the eighth, but yeah, I mean, starting off game one was interesting because I hadn't really scouted Florida all that much, but it was the battle of the Liams, Liam Peterson versus Liam Doyle on the mound. Man, Liam Peterson for Florida, he had some nasty stuff, dude, nasty stuff. We could not hit that guy at all. But right when the ace went out, right when Florida's ace went out, that's when this lineup came alive, dude. And I was saying this to you and Ian on Saturday. Dude, this lineup, this Tennessee lineup makes bad pitching look awful. I mean, or makes average pitching look awful.
Right.
Now, there's going to be some big time arms in the SEC, and dude, like I mean, there's just going to be some pitchers you just can't hit on. Like, the best hitters in the world can't hit on those kind of pitchers. And that's going to happen this year, right? It happened the beginning of Game 1 with Liam Peterson in Florida. But, dude, I mean, again, right when he came out, dude, we just came alive. And we ended up taking that game. Liam Doyle was really good in that game. He actually got out of a couple jams. He got into some trouble early. And really, this pitching staff as a whole has shown that they're really good at getting out of precarious situations, which is, you love to see that, dude. That's going to come up big time in postseason play. When you have a situation where the bases are loaded and you need an out, you need one out, and you're able to get out in those kind of situations, it's really good to have that intangible under your belt. But yeah, and then Game 2 was super interesting game, dude. That was, again, another very hardcore pitching battle. Marcus Phillips pitched 7 innings, 7 scoreless innings for us. Unbelievable, dude. It was 1-0 heading into the bottom of the 7th. 1-0. We had only scored 1 run. And, again, Florida had a freshman pitcher that was really getting the best of our lineup at the end of the day. But then what happened? They took their starter out. And then we started raking on their bullpen. That's exactly that's going to be the story of the season, dude. Like, again, good starting pitchers in the SEC, it doesn't really matter. Even guys like Christian Moore will struggle against those kind of guys. But once you get into that bullpen, you better have a deep bullpen. You better have a real deep bullpen. And it's so interesting how the series played out, too, because you wouldn't think Game 2 has such an impact on Game 3, but it really did. The fact that Marcus Phillips was able to pitch that entire game, because we go the 7 scoreless innings with Marcus Phillips on the mound, and then we have that insane explosion, scoring 9 runs in the 7th inning, and run rule Florida, like you said. You were kind of shocked. You're shocked because you just scored 9 runs against a top 10 team from the SEC in 1 inning. That's insane that this lineup's even capable of that. And I have to kind of discuss and talk through how we got in that spot. So we were looking like that inning was kind of just going to fizzle out. Jay Abernathy was up to bat, and we already had 1 out. And, dude, he had such a good AB. He kept fighting to stay in the AB and drew a walk, and that really opened it up, because then we were back to the top of the lineup. And then that's kind of where we did all of our damage. So yeah, dude, it was a phenomenal inning from them. And going back to what I was saying with Marcus Phillips, though, since he pitched that whole game, everybody's available for Game 3. We literally didn't have to pull into the bullpen at all. We had every single pitcher available from Game 3 outside of the 2 starters, Liam Doyle and Marcus Phillips. So we go into Game 3, and although I've questioned our pitching depth at times on the podcast, which is still pretty fair, I think. That's still a question mark about this team. Everyone was ready. Everyone was ready to go. And thank goodness, because we were struggling early in Game 3. And what really saved it was Dylan Loy and Nate Snead. Dude, Nate Snead is going to be a massive asset this year. I thought he had a chance to be a weekend starter coming into the year, but he's shown to be a very valuable asset as far as a closer is concerned, because in Game 1, he pitched 3.5 innings. Well, it was actually 3 1/3 inning to win that game. And he came into Game 1 with the bases loaded, needing 2 outs. And he was able to force a ground out and a double play and got us out of that inning to win Game 1. And then in Game 3, he came in and pitched 2 scoreless innings to hold on to the lead in Game 3, because even though we kind of broke it open in the 8th a little bit and kind of got the cushion, it was still a close game. It's still a game where if you don't have a good closer, if you have a situation like, we saw the proof is Game 1 or Game 2 for us, where we scored 9 runs in an inning. That can happen to anyone, dude. If you don't have a deep pitching staff and you're throwing guys that are just giving up a ton of runs, then we could have easily blown a 3-run lead. That's not like a huge lead or anything. 3 runs. So, yeah, Snead's going to be huge all year, man, closing these games out for us. And a year where I think our starting pitching is probably better than last year, but our pitching depth is probably less.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably an accurate assessment there. And yeah, correction to what I said earlier. Speaking of Snead and how he closed us out there, yeah, we were down 4-3 going into the sixth, down 4-2 going into the fifth. So what I was thinking of in terms of the eighth inning was we were up 4-5 going into the eighth, and like you said, we got a couple more runs in the eighth to give us a little cushion. But they, Florida went up 4-1 by the fourth inning, and then they just didn't. I mean, they got runners on base, a few times actually, and they had runners in scoring position at several points in this third and final game on Sunday. But after that fourth inning, they never scored again. And so, like you said, I think it was huge that we were able to have Snead and just those pitchers available today because of the showing yesterday. And so, yeah, it just honestly, I know we talked about on the last episode that you think it's silly to care about polls, and I agree. But if we are talking about, who is the best team in the country, I mean, shoot, it's hard not to. We were talking about, hey, you're opening up SEC play against a top 10 SEC team in Florida at number 7, and honestly, they probably should have been ranked higher than that because they had just beat Florida State, who was undefeated, the last undefeated team before us, and now we're the only remaining undefeated team. And so potentially a top 5, top 6 Florida team that we're playing, and we just come out and, I mean, this was, in my opinion, nothing short of domination. And so, really, to me, it's looking like we are once again the best team in the country, and definitely should get to Omaha, and it could be ours to lose again this year.
Yeah, definitely, dude. And I think we did dominate, but I also think it was closer than it looks. I mean, just like we were saying in game 2, dude, we have a 1-run lead in the 7th inning, and you run roll them. That's nuts. Now, it's also nuts that our lineup's even capable of doing something like that. That's insane. We probably have the only lineup in the country even capable of doing something like that because the depth of this lineup is insane. But also have to talk about a little bit last episode about the catching battle. I have to talk about that more because they started Cannon Peoples game 1, and he's been good. But I think Stone Lawless is taking the position. He started Saturday and Sunday, and dude, we watched him on Saturday. If anyone stood out on Saturday defensively, A, Jay Abernathy, but 2, Stone Lawless, dude. He made so many great plays over the weekend. He threw another. Insane. Yeah, it was insane. And he threw out another stealing base runner in game 3. He threw out 2 stealing base runners in game 2. He also had that one play that was probably our favorite play of the game in game 2, where Florida has a ground ball that's a very slow rolling ground ball. It was a weird hit. It was a really weird hit, and our player was a little bit hesitant coming up to the ball. I can't remember if it was the pitcher and Stone Lawless going for the ball, but at the end of the day, Stone Lawless kind of like hesitated a bit and then realized he had to be the one to go get it. He goes and gets it, dude, and just throws an absolute laser to first base to get the out, dude. It was an incredible throw, man. And what made it so incredible is that he had to grab it after sprinting to the ball and then turn around and throw a perfectly accurate, basically, pitch to first base to get this out, dude. He is looking like an insanely good defensive pitcher. Or, excuse me, catcher.
Catcher. Yeah, it was the throw was across his body. I highly encourage everyone to go check out that highlight. If we had higher production capability, we would show you all a little highlight of that right now. But hey, we're working on it. We'll get there.
Hey, I might be able to put that in. I'll put it in.
Yeah, that's when you show up and your bat's no longer in the dugout. There's a little slow roller. It's going to be a tough place here. Slides and can't get there.
This is one of those things, if you're playing on a grass field that has the dirt cuts all the way down, this probably goes foul. But because it's on turf, it stays fair, and a great job of the freshman Lawless going, getting it, and then spinning to get enough on that throw. Throws a strike over to first base. That's well done.
Yeah, maybe we'll throw in that highlight because it really was a great highlight, and so please go check it out and check out this highlight. But yeah, he runs up to the ball, he turns and throws it across his body, which it's difficult to throw a ball when you're coming across your body from one side to the other, and then for it to be accurate and for it to be hard enough to get there
Yes.
right before the runner tags. And it was all, we talked about this too when we were watching it. It was in the perfect spot too, because it was kind of down low, perfect for where the first baseman needed it to be. And so yeah, that he's looking like a great catcher for sure. And if I'm not mistaken, today in the third game on Sunday, Cannon Peebles was maybe our designated hitter. So I think he was still in the batting lineup.
He did bat.
So
he had a huge double.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll still see Peebles, and Peebles is still a great player. But man, Lawless is looking good.
Catcher's a really good spot to have depth in because I think it's not like the other positions where I think catchers need a little bit more rest than like guys in the outfield who can play day after day and game after game. So it's really nice to have depth at that position. But I mean, Stone Lawless is a freshman that this dude has tons of potential. And like you said, I think Cannon Peebles might have been pinch hitting for Lawless. I can't remember, but he did have a huge double in Game 3. It's actually what broke the game open for us. He had a double that scored in two runs. So yeah, it's a really good position to have depth in, and we have a really good duo, like a really really good duo. So that's huge. Another one like little highlight we got to talk about is Dean Curley's hit, and then when he like opened up his shirt. I don't know if you remember that, Blake, but his shirt, I don't think we noticed it on the broadcast, but his shirt was free Alberto. It was a free Alberto shirt. So
I noticed. I thought you noticed it when we saw it. That's why I flipped out because I was like, heck yeah.
Okay.
He opened up the shirt to free Alberta. I was sick.
Yep, definitely really cool. Another stat as well from the game. We actually tied the record yesterday, but we broke the record today. So 20-0 is the best start by a defending national champion in the history of college baseball. So really nice, dude. Really cool to have that under our belt. I looked up. I was curious like what the best start to a season was and see how close we are to that. We're definitely not going to hit that mark. The best start to a season I think is 34-0. There's not to be pessimistic, but there is literally no chance that happens in the SEC. We're not getting through the SEC schedule 34-0, but 20-0 is insane, dude. And we just swept a top 10 team in the country. You couldn't ask for a better start to this season, and I fully believe we'll be back in Omaha. I'm not yet ready to predict we're gonna be defending national champions or back-to-back national champions, but we'll definitely be back in Omaha, dude. This team, this pitching, and this lineup is just definitely good enough to be in Omaha. And like you said, there's a really good argument for us to be the best team in the country right now. I still stand by it not mattering because things will play themselves out, and we'll play LSU at some point. But yeah, dude, this team can beat anyone, obviously.
Yeah, we do have LSU coming up this season, so we'll definitely be able to settle that question in the regular season before Omaha. But yeah, this team can obviously play with anyone. I think we're going to be in Omaha again. And then once you get to Omaha, anything can happen. But like you said, the competition that we have in the SEC this year is quite stiff. So getting to 34-0 is definitely going to be a tall task and one that is not likely to occur. But that's still absolutely amazing that they broke the record there for the best start to a season by defending national champions. And so very cool to see that again against a very good Florida team. And so that is very good stuff from this baseball team. We do have a midweek game coming up against ETSU. So we've got little brother ETSU coming into town on Tuesday, and then starting on Thursday. It's interesting this week. It looks like it's not a Friday, Saturday, Sunday situation. It is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and we're going to be heading down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to play the Crimson Tide. And man, if we can beat the Crimson Tide, which they're ranked 17th, right? So this is going to be a tough team. SC is incredibly deep this season in baseball, but if we can beat them in baseball again, we beat them this past year in football. We beat them in basketball. Man, we haven't lost the Crimson Tide in anything in a while.
Well, not to correct you, I was going to bring this stat up. Now I feel like an a-hole correcting you, but this was the only SEC series we lost last year, actually, against Alabama.
Well, I know, and that's what I mean. If we can beat them this year, then we'll have a nice little string going.
Oh yeah, definitely, exactly. But yeah, dude, this is going to be a really tough series, like you said. I mean, again, a team we lost to last year, literally pretty much the only series we lost all season last year, and it's at Alabama, and the SEC is loaded. I mean, the SEC is loaded every year in baseball. Alabama has another good team this year. Definitely don't expect to sweep them. I think our undefeated streak's probably going to come to an end. But if we can win the series, that's the main thing that matters in baseball. So you win two. And, dude, Marcus Phillips has given me enough confidence where I feel like Friday and Saturdays, man, we're going to look really good. Now, Sundays are still going to be a question because you can't depend on your Saturday game only pitching one guy. That's probably going to be the only time that happens this year, to be honest. I was surprised that Marcus went 7 to begin with, let alone run rule him and nobody else has to pitch. That's not going to happen the rest of the season. So we're going to have to dig into our bullpen on Saturday. So that's going to hurt the Sunday. So again, I'm kind of where it's like, okay, I'm going to feel really good Friday and Saturday. Like every Friday and Saturday, I'm going to feel really good. Now, like you said, it's Thursday and Friday this week. But the first two games I'm going to feel really good about. Sunday's going to be a question, though. So, again, kind of like I predicted last week, I think it's going to be a Thursday and Friday win where we start off the series 2-0, and then we'll finally drop a game. We'll start the year 22-0. We'll finally drop one Sunday or Saturday against Alabama. That's going to be my prediction.
Okay. I'm with you in that prediction. Again, I think we've got to drop one eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, we're going to be on the road in Tuscaloosa against Alabama, and Alabama is a solid team at number 17 currently, and so against a rival. So I do think we're probably going to drop that Sunday game, like you mentioned. I think we'll take care of business against ETSU in this midweek game coming up. At this point, when you all are watching this on Monday, it'll be tomorrow, Tuesday, that we'll be playing ETSU midweek. That game comes on at 5 p.m. And then we'll take that trip down to Tuscaloosa, again, starting on Thursday, going through Saturday. So I think by Saturday, we'll finally get our first loss. But honestly, you really couldn't ask to a better start to the season from this baseball team. They're absolutely, like you've been talking about all season long so far for the baseball team, they're electric. They're fun to watch. We highly encourage all of our listeners to check out the baseball Vols. If you are just listening for basketball or whatever the case may be, it's fun stuff to watch this baseball team.
Yep, and those midweek games are interesting. Don't be surprised if we drop a weird midweek game to a team like ETSU. That happened to us last year. I can't remember exactly who we played, but we dropped a midweek team to a team that you wouldn't expect the number one team in the country to lose to. That can just happen because midweek games, you're pitching young dudes. I mean, you're pitching developmental guys. Like you're gonna have a deficit pitching, and also this is going to be the case all year. This is one reason I was surprised we were able to sweep Florida. There's a huge target on our back, dude. I mean, everyone's going to bring their A game, especially a team like ETSU. So don't be surprised if we randomly drop a game like that. That's why baseball is so fascinating. It's not like basketball and it's not like football, where if a football team lost like ETSU number one in the country, that'd be like, an earth-shattering upset where they would tank in the rankings. Their playoff hopes would pretty much be dead. Like that's what an ETSU loss would look like in football and in basketball as well. I mean, basketball, if you lost a game like that would be a massive upset. And in baseball, it's an upset, but it's not like it's not insane because pitching is so dependent on your performance in baseball. So So don't freak out as a fan base if we end up losing a game like to ETSU on a Tuesday.
Don't tell me you're dropping another prediction.
No,
Okay.
we'll run rule ETSU. We'll run roll them.
Okay. But that's a good point to bring up, right? I mean, eventually we might drop a midweek game as well, and that's not the main thing is for this baseball team is this SEC. It's honestly it's like basketball this season. It is just an absolute gauntlet, and so
it's like
they're
that in
going to
baseball
be
every year. Every year,
it's like that. It's like that every year in baseball for sure. But I just but our basketball and our baseball teams are just running absolute gauntlets this year, and so there's going to be some losses, no doubt. Austin and I both predict our first loss of the season will come on the Saturday game against Alabama, which will be the third game of the series, but that we will win that series 2-1. And so always good to get a win against Alabama because, again, we have, with the exception of last year's, but I'm hoping we avenge last year's baseball series loss to them. And again, join the football team and the basketball team in getting dubs over Alabama in this year. So, Austin, any other final thoughts on the baseball team or basketball team or anything else Vol sports related?
No, man. Ready for this March Madness and ready to see the baseball team what they can do the rest of the year.
Going to be fun stuff for sure, folks. We've got a lot of Vol Sports still coming up, so please keep coming back. Go ahead and give us a subscription if you haven't already. We'd really appreciate it. We are going to be uploading every week. Right now, the schedule is going to be a little wonky because of, we're heading into the postseason for basketball and baseball. Of course, there's for baseball, we would probably just do one episode a week anyway to kind of round up the weekend games and all that. So schedule will be a little wonky, but please give us a subscription, turn on that notification bell so that you can know whenever a new episode drops. We're going to be covering all of this upcoming Vol Sports. Huge stuff coming for the basketball team. Could potentially make a run, and can we get our first Final Four in program history? That would be absolutely huge. And then, of course, this baseball team looking like the best in the country once again. So y'all stay tuned for that. We will catch you all on the other side of all of these games. Until then, go Vols.
GBO.